Meet Marcus. He is standing at the counter of an irrigation supply house holding a $9 gasket, and he is turning his phone slightly away from the man at the register so nobody can see the number on the screen. The number is $11.42. That's not what's left in his spending money for the week. That is everything. Every dollar in the account. That is the entire contents of the account 2 grown adults live out of, and the next paycheck is 6 days away. He buys the gasket. It goes through. He walks out into the heat and gets back to work. Because there's a valve manifold on a school field that has to run tonight, and nobody there will ever know the man fixing it just spent $9 of his last $11. Marcus makes $68,000 a year, putting irrigation systems into office parks, ball fields, and cemeteries for 22 years. He is 49, working full-time, with plenty of earning years still in front of him. He isn't in debt collections, he isn't gambling it away. By every measure from the outside, he's a man doing fine. And 4 times a month, he angles his phone away from a stranger so nobody can see what 22 years of work looks like on a screen. He has never said that number out loud to anyone. Not at work, not at home. So let me ask you something first. What if the reason you can't hold on to money has almost nothing to do with how much you make and almost everything to do with the shape it arrives in? Look at Marcus's month. It isn't chaos, it's clockwork. On payday, $2,140 lands. Within 40 hours, most of it is gone to things he actually owes. Rent, the electric, the phones, the insurance, the food. He's not confused about where it went. Then on the 3rd day, feeling good, feeling like a responsible adult, he moves $300 into savings. He does this most months. He has done it for years. And somewhere in the 2nd week, that $300 comes back. Not all at once, a $60 transfer, then a $110 transfer, then the rest. And each one has a reason, and every reason is a real reason. By the time he's at that counter with $11.42 on the screen, the $300 has been home for days. He is not failing to save. He is running a disciplined monthly ritual of saving and then handing all of it back on schedule every month. By the end of this, you'll know the name of the thing that eats that $300. You'll have run one number about your own life without stopping this video, and you'll have a setup that takes 10 minutes tonight and then never asks you for anything again. The trap has a name, and once it has a name, you'll see it working in your own account this month. Call it the payday lump. Here's the whole thing. Your money arrives in a lump, so you were told to save it in a lump. Payday comes, you take a slice off the top, you move it in one motion, and that motion is supposed to be the whole strategy. Every plan Marcus ever tried had the same skeleton. When the money lands, move a chunk of it. A lump is one big decision made once in front of a balance that's the highest it will be all month, and a big decision made once can be reversed once. One transfer back and the entire month's saving is undone in 9 seconds while you're standing in line somewhere. There's a second thing the lump does, and this one is happening inside your head, not inside your bank. There's a study by John Gorville at Harvard published in the Journal of Consumer Research in 1998 on what he called pennies a day framing. He found that when a cost is presented as a small daily amount, people compare it to trivial daily spending, a coffee, a soda, and it registers as nothing. Present the same total as a lump and they compare it to their bills, where it feels enormous. Same dollars, same year, 2 different feelings. Now put your own $300 transfer through that. Your brain files it next to the electric bill and the car insurance, and it sits there all month wearing the face of a bill you don't actually owe anyone. So the first time the month gets tight, it is the most obvious thing in the account to cancel. It has no due date, no late fee, and nobody calling about it. It is designed to be the first thing you take back. That's the mechanism. Not weakness, not a spending problem. The failure lives in the shape the money moves in, not in the person moving it. Marcus spent years thinking the opposite, that the $300 came back because he wasn't serious enough. 22 years of 6 in the morning Februaries blowing out lines before a freeze, and he believed the problem was his discipline. And it had been running like this for years, not one bad stretch, the same shape of month going back further than he wants to count. In the back half of every cycle, he quietly stops agreeing to things. Somebody at home asks about ordering food, and he does arithmetic before answering. That's the part that wears on a person, not being broke, but narrating around it. He'd tried twice before. Not vaguely, 2 real attempts, with dates. April 2019. He set a standing transfer, $200 every payday, automatic, into a savings account at the same bank. It worked. It worked for 7 weeks, and it built to $800. And he remembers the number because he checked it constantly, the way you check a thing you're proud of. Then came a week where the $200 had to come back. Just that one time. And here is the part that killed it. In May, to be back on track, he needed to move $400 in a single motion to make up for the miss. He didn't have $400 to move, so he moved nothing. And once you've moved nothing once, the next payday you move nothing again, because now the number required to catch up is $600. By June, the transfer was canceled. The $800 was spent by August. There's one more beat in that attempt, and it's the one everybody skips. He didn't quit in May. In May, he promised himself $250 instead of $200 starting in July to make up the difference. That is the sound a plan makes right before it dies. Nobody who couldn't move $200 has ever solved it by scheduling $250 for later. February 2023. New plan, better plan. Every overtime check goes straight to savings. This is a good plan. This is the plan half the internet gives you. It ran 2 months and built $610. Then March had almost no overtime because March was wet and nobody needed sprinklers. In April, with the logic of the plan intact, he now owed himself 2 months of overtime he'd never worked. Dead by May. Look at those two side by side. Because they died the same death. Both plans survived the miss. Both plans died the month after the miss. The month when catching up became the price of continuing. That is what a lump does. It turns one bad week into a debt you owe yourself, and nobody keeps paying a debt they owe themselves. The night he figured this out, he wasn't reading anything about money, he was writing up a job. There was a stretch of new sod at a business park where the ground kept coming up dry no matter how long the zone ran, and Marcus had said the same sentence to customers for 2 decades. The ground can only take water at the rate it can absorb, roughly a ½ inch an hour on that kind of soil. Dump 2 inches on it in 20 minutes, and you have not watered the grass, you've watered the storm drain. The ground didn't reject the water, it rejected the rate. He sat with that for a while. Then he thought about $2,140 landing in one motion twice a month on a life that could only absorb it in small amounts. He wasn't trying to get rich, he'll tell you that flatly. He was tired of being a man who angles his phone away from a cashier and tired of doing math in his head before answering an easy question at his own kitchen sink. That was the whole motivation. Not more money, less narrating. So that night, after 2 dead plans and a lot of quiet frustration with himself, he opened his banking app and set up something that looked, honestly, a little stupid. He didn't tell anyone. He figured that if this one died too, at least it would die small. $3 every single day. No exceptions. That's the whole rule. The $3 rule. 1 automatic transfer, $3, once a day, every day, into an account that is not the one you spend from. It runs on Christmas and it runs the day before you get paid. You are not consulted. Here's the number that made Marcus laugh when he first ran it. $3 a day is $1,095 a year. Compare that to what the lump plan promised him. $300 a month is $3,600 a year. On paper, the lump wins by a mile. Any reasonable person picks the lump. Now compare it to what the lump plan actually delivered. Marcus's honest total kept from a full year of moving $300 on payday? 0. Every single deposit came back before the next one went in. He deposited about $3,300 that year and finished with nothing, a very disciplined loop that moved money in a circle. So the real comparison isn't $3,600 against $195, it's 0 against $195. And there's a reason the small one survives. There was a study by Dean Carlin and colleagues published in Management Science in 2016, testing what happens when savers simply get a reminder about the money they meant to put away. Nothing else changed. Same income, same account, same intentions. Savings went up by around 6%, and the researchers' read was that a big share of what looks like unwillingness is actually attention. People aren't refusing, they're occupied, and the plan quietly needs them at a moment when they're not there. The $3 rule doesn't need you. That's the point of it. It never asks for attention, so it can never lose the competition for your attention, and it's too small to be worth reversing. There's no month tight enough that clawing back $3 fixes anything, so the transfer survives for exactly the reason the lump never does. In Marcus's trade, this isn't a new idea. A drip line puts out about a gallon an hour. Standing next to one, it looks broken. It looks like the kind of thing a customer calls you about. There's water just seeping out down here. And it is the only reason a hedgerow is alive in August, because it goes on all night, every night, at a rate the ground can actually take. The sprinkler is impressive. The drip works. Run a number on yourself. You don't need to stop this video or open anything, just do it while I talk. Think of the biggest amount of money you could lose today. Actually lose. Gone. No explanation. Without going to check your balance. Not the amount that would ruin you, the amount you'd shrug at. For most people, it's somewhere between $1 and $5. Whatever yours is, hold it. Multiply it by 365. That's your drip total. It's the sum that already slips past you every year at a rate so small you decided in advance not to feel it. 3 examples so you can find yourself in one. If your shrug number is $2, your drip total is $730. If it's $3, your drip total is $1,095. If it's $5, your drip total is $1,825. And if you're sitting there thinking your honest shrug number is $1, fine, that's $365. And $365 is still more than most people watching this capped last year. Now, the second half, and this is the part that stings. Take your drip total and set it next to the most money you have ever managed to keep. Actually keep. In one place, at one time, in a single year of your working life. For a lot of people watching, the drip total is bigger, sometimes twice as big. Marcus ran this in his truck at a job site. His shrug number was $3, drip total $1,095. The most he had ever held on to in a single year was $800 back in 2019, and he didn't hold on to that either, he just touched it on the way past. So the gap was $295 in the wrong direction, and it had nothing to do with his income. He'd had the money every year for 22 years. It arrived in a shape he couldn't hold. Say both numbers out loud if you can. Most people have never once put them next to each other, and they've both been true for years. I'm gonna be honest about the ugly part because you're going to hit it, and I'd rather you hit it knowing. 90 days into the $3 rule, Marcus had $270. That's it. 3 months of perfect execution, not one missed day, and he had less than his old failed plan built in 7 weeks back in 2019. By the only scoreboard he had ever used, the drip was losing badly to a plan that had already proven it doesn't work. This is exactly the moment people quit. Not at the start. The start feels clever. They quit at 90 days when they do the arithmetic, and the arithmetic is embarrassing. Marcus almost did. He looked at $270 and heard the same sentence he'd heard in 2019 and again in 2023, "This isn't working." He'd been here twice before, and both times that sentence had turned out to be correct. He gave himself until the end of the month before he'd cancel it. So here's what's actually being built at day 90, and it isn't the balance. There's a study by Philippa Lally and colleagues at University College London published in the European Journal of Social Psychology in 2010 that tracked people forming a new daily behavior and measured how long it took before that behavior became automatic, done without deciding. The median was 66 days. And there was a second finding in it that matters more here. Missing a single day did not measurably damage the process. The curve kept climbing. Read that against Marcus's 2 dead attempts, both killed by exactly 1 miss. The $3 rule can't do that. There's no version of missing a day that requires you to move $6 tomorrow, because you aren't the one moving it. So at day 66, somewhere in there, the thing quietly crossed over. It stopped being a plan Marcus was executing and became something that just happens in his account, like the electric bill, except pointing the other way. The protection starts way earlier than the balance suggests. What protects you at 3 months is not $270. It's that the transfer no longer requires a decision from a tired person, and every plan Marcus ever lost was lost by a tired person making a decision. The $800 needed him twice a month forever. The $270 needs nobody forever. Here's where I'd normally lose you, because you're thinking, fine, but the disciplined version of the lump would beat this. If someone actually stuck to $200 a paycheck, they'd bury $3 a day. Let me introduce Tanya. Same crew as Marcus, same pay grade. Their checks are within a couple $100 a month. She's the first truck out of the yard most mornings. If you had to bet on one person on that crew to stick to a plan, you would not bet on Marcus. Tanya did the obvious thing, and she did it well. $200 every paycheck, 26 paychecks, automatic. Across that year, she moved $5,200 into savings. She also pulled money back 9 times. Not frivolously, it would be easy and dishonest to make her the cautionary tale. Every pullback had a real reason attached to a real week of a real life. 9 transfers, $4,340 total, back into checking. Look at the sizes because they tell you what's happening. The smallest was $180. The largest was $900. 7 of the 9 were over $300. None were under $100. And that's not an accident. When the money is sitting there in a lump, the amount you bring back is set by whatever's in front of you, not by what you actually needed. She never once pulled back $11. Nobody does. She finished the year with $860. Marcus moved $1,095 in and pulled back nothing because there was never a night where dragging $3 back solved anything. He finished with $1,095. She deposited nearly 5 times what he did and ended $235 behind him. Sit with that because it's the whole argument in 2 numbers. Tanya wasn't lazy and she wasn't weak. She was more consistent than he was. 26 deposits out of 26. Her plan failed anyway, and it failed on the withdrawal side, which is the side nobody talks about because every piece of advice you've ever gotten was about how much to put in. A lump is easy to deposit and easy to reverse. A drip is boring and not worth reversing. Over a year, the boring one wins, even when the person running the other one is better at this than you are. That's the part that should take the weight off your shoulders. If the disciplined version loses too, then the thing that's been going wrong in your account was never a referendum on your character. Now, the honest catch, and I'm not going to soften it, $3 a day is about $90 a month. If your actual situation is that you are $400 short every month, real short, the kind where the shortfall goes on a card and stays there, the $3 rule does not fix that. This is a mechanism for keeping money you already earn. It is not a mechanism for earning more, and anyone selling you a daily habit as a cure for an income gap is selling you something. What it does is stop the leak while you work on the rest. 2 different jobs, and this one only does the first. And there was a cost to Marcus that had nothing to do with dollars, so I'll name it. To run this, he had to give up a story he told himself for 22 years, that one day there'd be one big move, a good year, a windfall, a serious plan, and it would fix everything at once. That story let him off the hook every month, because the real fix was always still coming. $3 a day is an admission that nothing dramatic is going to happen, and that the small, ugly thing is the whole answer. Some people can't give that up. They keep the story instead of the money. 2 smaller admissions while I'm here. That 66-day figure from the Lally study is a median, and the range in that study ran from about 18 days to 254 days. Some people's version of automatic took the better part of a year. And second, if your checking account routinely runs to nothing, a daily transfer will find that floor and can trigger a fee, which would make this cost you money. If that's your account, start at $1. $1 a day is $365 a year, and $365 is still infinitely more than a plan that keeps handing itself back. 7 months in, 204 days, no interruptions, the account had $612 in it. And then the thing arrived. Every year, Marcus has to renew a certification for the backflow prevention work he does. And every year, the renewal runs about $340. And every year, it lands in a week where it's the last thing that can afford to land. The crisis isn't dramatic. It's the same $340 at the same time every year, and every year it has taken him under. Last year, it went on a credit card in March, and it was still there in September. The year before that, he paid it out of checking and then spent 11 days at the bottom of the account, which is where the $11.42 morning came from. This year, he paid it from the drip account, $612 in, $340 out, and there was still $272 sitting there afterward. Checking never felt it. There was no transfer back, no card, no 11 days at the bottom. He paid a bill and went back to work, and the entire event took about 90 seconds. What he noticed came later that evening. He hadn't thought about the $340 once since paying it. That was the new part. Not the money, the not thinking about it. Here's how he knew something had actually changed. 2 days later, he was at the same supply counter, buying a coupling, and he pulled out his phone to check the balance the way he always does, and he didn't turn the screen. He just looked at it, out in the open in front of the same guy at the register. It said $291.44. That is not a lot of money. It's just no longer a number that gets to decide how he stands at a counter. The rest showed up in ordinary places. He stopped doing arithmetic before answering the food question at home. He stopped knowing his checking balance to the penny at all times, which is a thing only people in trouble know. The disaster showed up right on schedule. It hit the system instead of hitting him, and it did nothing. Here's the whole build. And it's genuinely 10 minutes tonight. 1. Pick the destination, a savings account somewhere that isn't your everyday bank with no debit card attached. That's the only friction you need, and you never think about it again. If you want the long version of why an account you can see in the same app almost never survives, that's the entire subject of my Ghost Money video, and it's the one to watch right after this. 2. Set one recurring transfer, $3. Daily, starting tomorrow. One number, one direction, one destination. 3, there is no 3. No tracking, no categories, no weekly check-in, no deciding anything on day 40. If a plan needs you next month, it's a lump wearing a costume. At 1 year, that's $1,095 sitting in an account you didn't think about before a cent of interest. At 3 years, it's $3,285. If the drip is $2 instead of $3, 1 year is $730 and 3 years is $2,190. If it's $5, 1 year is $1,825 and 3 years is $5,475. None of those figures will change your life. That's not the argument. The argument is that Marcus has been earning good money for 22 years and had never once held a number like that at the same time, and it never took more than $3 a day. The money came slowly. The identity came the same night he set it up. Because from the moment that transfer existed, the sentence he could say about himself changed. He was no longer a guy who was going to start saving, or who used to try. He was a person who saves. And it was true at the end of the first day when the total was $3. It wasn't a claim about the future. There was a transfer running. It had already happened. That's what he actually got out of this, not $3,285. He got to stop being a man who hides a phone screen, and he got that in 10 minutes, months before the balance was worth mentioning to anyone. You get the same thing tonight, not the money. The money takes as long as it takes. The identity is available immediately, and it costs $3. The version of you who can't hold on to money was never a character. It was a shape. And shapes can be changed in an evening. There's one more thing that shows up later, and I'll flag it now because it catches people off guard. Once the drip account has real money in it, a second question arrives. Whether that money should keep sitting still, or whether it should be pointed at the one balance that's quietly charging you every month. Because a dollar doing nothing and a dollar working against interest are not the same dollar. But that's a topic for another video. If you don't want to miss it, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. So tell me your number. What's the amount you could lose today without checking your balance, and what does it look like when you multiply it by 365? I read every reply, and I'd like to know how many of you find out your drip total is bigger than your best year.